Do you know what a centimorgan is? What president's daughter cut her wedding cake with a samurai sword? And what does the Turkish embassy and the recording industry have in common? The answer is coming up on Artico, Art in Your Community. It's been 3 years since DC's Martin Luther King Library closed its doors for major renovation. Now, this historic landmark is opening with a 60% increase in public space, a new rooftop garden, a beautiful spiral staircase, wonderful art, and more.
My work is to ensure that the branch libraries as well as the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library have beautiful art and that is accessible to every district resident. So we worked with an artist, Zenobia Bailey, on this beautiful ceiling piece. She hand crocheted these mandalas that went into this piece, and then she designed this beautiful ceiling of circular elements that actually has a little bit of a feature of a photograph from the March on Washington embedded in the image.
Keisha Durrett produces large-scale public artworks for galleries and other spaces and creates using a variety of media. Her installation at the library spans the new glass-walled vestibule. She hopes as people view her work, they'll consider those who strive to make social change.
I've created two 16 by 16 foot images that will be adhered to the glass walls of the vestibule as visitors enter the library. On their right, there will be a historic image of Martin Luther King Jr. Speaking to a crowded audience at the football field of Cardozo High School. This image is rendered in halftone dots, and those halftone dots are made up of protest buttons acquired from the collection of Nia Kumba, a local activist. As a queer woman, black artist, throughout my life there have been moments where I felt invisible or unseen, and so not only is this work a way for me personally to take up space in the world, but for me to take up space for other people and to bring forward themes and causes and people and language that typically goes untalked about.
So in addition to the pieces that we're planning to hang throughout the space, we're also really excited to offer programming that will teach district residents about the artists and teach district residents how to create their own art. We'll have a permanent exhibit that is going to focus on Martin Luther King's life and his activism and the activists of DC and how those activists really influenced King and how King influenced them in turn. We'll also have exhibits about Marion Barry, Mayor for Life, punk, go-go, some of the DC's art and culture and history. We're really excited that the mural of Martin Luther King's life that was created by Don Miller that's in the Great Hall of the library has been carefully restored, and now you can really see the beautiful colors that exist in the mural, and it tells the story of Martin Luther King's life. And there's a lot of DC stories that are in there. Renovation was done by a firm named Meccano, which is a Dutch architecture firm. As you may know, the library itself is a Mies van der Rohe building that was completed in 1972. And it was a beautiful building, but unfortunately had long since sort of outlived its use for us as a public library space. Honestly, when people come to the new library, I think they will be most surprised just at how different it is. I think people had this memory of this building because it was neglected for, frankly, a little too long. And so they have these memories of, scary stairwells. And the fact that you can see really from one side of the library to the other, that's a very Miesian characteristic of a building. And because we've been able to take out so much of the brick on the inside, it will really be so much more open and welcoming really as a space than it was before. We are excited to be opening our doors on September 24th to the public. Of course, we will be practicing very safe social distancing, and we will have rules about what services the patrons will be able to access. Maybe limited service here when we first open our doors, but we're excited to be able to show people at least a small taste of what they'll be able to experience once we're able to fully reopen.
Carolyn Maraskin founded DC Design Tours in 2015. Trained as an architect, Carolyn worked in the field for 5 years, but decided it was more fun to talk about buildings than draw them. Carolyn offers a variety of city tours. We hung out with her on one of her favorites.
This tour, Dupont Circle and Embassy Row, it's one of my favorites. Each tour has a bit of a theme. So this one is sort of rich people and the crazy things they build with their money. So this tour is all about Gilded Age Washington, these rich Washingtonians building elaborate, opulent mansions and a giant game of keeping up with the Joneses. And just kind of the general transformation that the city has made over the course of 250 years. You really see almost everything. We don't have too much modern, but short of modern, there's a real, like I said, diversity of styles across the city. And the area really develops in the 1880s thanks to the involvement of a guy named Boss Shepard, Alexander Boss Shepard. Boss is definitely the operative word here. He was kind of like a mafioso of his day. He was governor of Washington, D.C. back when we had governors. And he sort of sets his sights on this neighborhood to develop as a nouveau riche area. So the types of folks he draws to this area are not sort of the old Southern blue blood wealth, because that's all gone after the Civil War. This is the nouveau riche. So the type of folks that move here are railroad tycoons, newspaper magnates, scientists, sort of these captains of industry that start to come here and build big, magnificent mansions. Now, Boss also renames this circle, formerly Pacific Circle, renames it for Admiral Francis Dupont. So there was originally a statue of Dupont here in the middle. It's funny though, because the Duponts is a rich Washingtonian, or not Washingtonian, rich American family, famous for publishing and pharmacy. They're still all over Delaware. They had very little association with Dupont Circle. The idea was just that if he named the neighborhood after rich people, that rich people would move here. And it worked. So there was...
Build it, they will come.
Exactly. So this is the Blaine Mansion. This is a great place to start because this is one of the oldest houses that still exists in the Dupont Circle neighborhood. Built in 1888 by James Blaine, 3-time presidential hopeful. So he didn't live here very long. He actually moved out because he said the house was too far away from the White House. The man who moves in was George Westinghouse, who was a famous scientist and contemporary of Thomas Edison. Now it's also a good example about the diversity of architectural styles. This is in a Queen Anne revival style. So originally comes from England, from the reign of Queen Anne. Us Americans, we really like to manipulate European styles and make them our own. So elements of Queen Anne, if we look up at the top, you can see all the different roof lines, a lot of different chimneys. Symmetry is important to Queen Anne architecture. Those beautiful details in terracotta between the windows there. The finials at the very, very top, which are those sort of jutting out stone sculpted pieces. Now this is the house of one of my absolute favorite Washingtonians on the tour, a woman named Alice Roosevelt Longworth, who's the daughter of Teddy Roosevelt. Now she had a great quote about her dad. She said, "My father Teddy likes to be the baby at every christening, the bride at every wedding, and the corpse at every funeral." And that definitely described him, but it also described Alice. She was a big character. For example, she has a pet snake named Emily Spinach that she would wear around her neck as a necklace to sort of freak out visiting diplomats. So she was known to smoke and drink. She would ride in cars with men unchaperoned. She would skinny dip in the Potomac River, sunbathe on the roof of the White House. So essentially Teddy just can't wait to get rid of her, and he arranges a marriage for her with a man named Longworth, who our Longworth Congressional Building is named for. So he's a congressman. Their wedding happens right on the front lawn of the White House, massively attended. Alice is sure to wear a blue wedding dress, lest anyone think the symbolism of the white wedding dress apply to her, get my drift. And she also cuts her wedding cake with a samurai sword. So their marriage, very rocky right from the start. They both have affairs. She has a daughter by another man. So they divorce. She moves into this house, has it built for herself in an Italianate revival style, lives here the rest of her life, remains very politically active. Supposedly, if you wanted to get anywhere in DC politics, you had to come here and pay Alice a visit, and she lived until 1980. So behind me here is the Walsh McLean Mansion, another home of a Gilded Age Washingtonian. This one has a bit of American dream story attached to it. It was built initially by George Walsh, who was an Irish immigrant, came to the United States with very little, went out to California and Colorado and made a fortune in mining, gold mining. Now this building is in a neo-Baroque style, so now we're talking about French styles as opposed to English styles. Later we'll see Italian styles and Spanish styles. Again, there's all sorts on Embassy Row. Things about this building that make it French. First and foremost is the roof. That's called a mansard roof. It's very steep. Normally it would be built in blue slate. Here we've got red. We also have very heavy trim, the cornice around the bottom, right where it goes from red to green. That's called a cornice, very thick. That's also very French. And then the most impressive thing to me about the building is the curvature of the facade. See how the front kind of undulates? So far we've seen Italian, we've seen French, we've seen British. Here we have a neoclassical building. So this is kind of that iconic style of Washington, inspired by Greece and Rome. When this house was built, the Anderson Mansion, it was the biggest house on Millionaires Row, built for $835,000, which is about $27 million today. Now the Andersons, they never had any children. So when they passed away, they willed their house to become the headquarters of something called the Society of the Cincinnati, which is still what it is. This is the oldest fraternal order in the United States. To be a member, you have to trace your lineage back to a commissioned officer who fought in the Continental Army in the American Revolution. The great thing about it is that it's open to the public. So anyone can go inside, it's free. They usually have exhibits about the American Revolution and you can tour through the house. It's fabulous. All right, so behind me here is one of my absolute favorite houses on the tour, both for the architecture and for the story. So this is known as the Edward Everett Mansion. Today it's the residence of the Turkish ambassador, and originally was built by Edward Everett, sort of your typical American industrialist. He was an early adopter of the fluted bottle cap, which is on the top of beer that we still use today. And when he died, he hadn't allocated in his will how his daughters were to inherit the house. And ultimately they decide, okay, no one is inheriting the house, and they sell it to Turkey. So in the 1930s, the first ambassador to the United States from Turkey moves in with his family. He's got 2 sons, his daughter, his wife, now all living in Washington, D.C. And his boys, who are now growing up in the city, become very enamored with jazz music. So these 2 sons become so enamored with the jazz scene, they end up holding concerts in their home, some of the very first integrated concerts in the United States, white and black mixing together, appreciating jazz. And the punchline to the story is that these 2 boys go on to be so involved and so in love with music, they're actually the founders of Atlantic Records. Now, one of my favorite things about this area are all these hidden gems, and this is one of the best examples. These are called call boxes. Now, you'll actually find these all over Washington, D.C. Now that you know what to look for. They're kind of like Easter eggs. You know, you'll see them in almost every neighborhood. Capitol Hill, Georgetown, Mount Pleasant, Northeast, they've got them all. And originally they were installed as a security measure for the neighborhood. So this is, again, in the late 1800s. Obviously, before people had telephone, this was a way you could contact either the fire department or the police. So you can see the 2 different kinds of boxes here. This one for the fire department would have a pole at the top. That's how you know it's for the fire department. And then the one on the other side of the tree was for the police. It's shorter with no pole at the top. Originally, the police pole was painted blue, and this one would have been painted red. Now, eventually they were retrofitted. First they had telegraph, then telephone. And then eventually they were all kind of pulled out, and some are just sort of sitting and rusting, but in this neighborhood they've done a really nice job with a program called the Art on Call program, where they've hired local artists to put little installations in. So here you can see a fire truck with a water tank at the back. This driver's looking real stressed out. And then over there you'll see a policeman actually using one of the call boxes.
So Caroline, tell me, where are we right now?
So this is a fantastic hidden gem of the neighborhood. These are called the Spanish Steps. Not quite as exciting as the version in Rome, but they're modeled after them. So these are built in 1911 by Boss Shepherd. This is all part of the City Beautiful movement. So one of the ideas behind it is to build beautiful civic spaces. So this is an urban park, but it also serves a function to connect the 2 halves of this street together.
Wow, our own DC historic and architectural version of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And if you want to know more about DC Design Tours, visit info@dcdesigntours.com. We asked artists creating at home during the pandemic to share some of their work with us. For this episode, Indian classical dancer Shravanti Roy.
Hello everyone, Namaskar. My name is Shravanti Roy. I'm an Indian classical dancer based in Northern Virginia. I'm also the artistic director of my dance school, Rumjhum Nrityalaya, also based in Northern Virginia. Today, I'm going to be presenting a dance called Mangalam. Mangalam comes from the Sanskrit word chants. Mangalam is also coming from the music called Mangalam, composed by late sitar legend Pandit Ravi Shankar and produced by late Beatles legends George Harrison, especially applicable during this time of the year. Mangalam comes from music and
When COVID-19 struck, Roundhouse Theater, like so many others, canceled their upcoming season. And then came the scramble to develop ways for artists to keep creating and stay employed. For Roundhouse, one of the answers was the web series Homebound. It's the story of two main characters, played by Craig Wallace and Mahmoud Ibrahimzadeh, coping with situations and people during a pandemic.
I was barely at the conference, and I doubt I was even near the guy who tested positive, but, of course, caution is good. No people, but, who misses people, right? If anything, I've become more productive since I can't come to the office. It's like, everywhere is now my office.
Good. Is that good? You said it in an upbeat way.
I did say it in an upbeat way. Oh, I see the link. I'm hanging up now. Hello.
You aren't a potato.
I think you must have downloaded a filter or something.
Please help. You see my predicament? Have to run the meeting, and I doubt a potato will command respect from my colleagues. Who listens to a potato?
Well,
the main idea behind Homebound was to be able to employ some of the artists that had lost work subsequently, as well as being able to create some sort of digital content that felt current and topical to what was going on in the world, and being able to comment on that in an artistic way. There are 10 total episodes for Homebound. I was in, I believe, 6 of them, and I served as the director of photography on the series. Each episode dealt with a very specific topic. Each episode had a different writer.
That's okay. I mean, hey, it's less than 5 minutes into our first date and you're already in my bedroom. Oh.
What?
I was gonna ask you what you do, but, I mean, what are people really doing nowadays? I mean, even if you're still working, it's like, you know.
Yeah, and I'm not, so that makes it super awkward.
Not
working. I'm not. I mean, I wasn't, I'm furloughed.
Ah, shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if you want to end the date now.
Yeah, I should probably go.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
Oh.
The 10 different writers that we hired who had also been affected by COVID-19, they were all very prominent writers. They were all at the top of their game, who had something to say, that wanted to work with Roundhouse. And so making that transition in terms of storytelling from theater to film was definitely a tricky one for all of us. Being able to learn together with a bunch of theater artists and to create a new vocabulary for how we want to tell a story and the medium in which we are given to tell that story became a real exploration of our skills, of our talents, of our passion, of our determination, our drive, and we adapted, which I think is what artists are designed to do.
The show was shot incredibly creatively. Previously, Roundhouse would have sent us lighting equipment to our house, socially distanced, left on our porch. We would have a script meeting on Friday. Then that Monday, we would all gather on Zoom, and then we would figure out how to shoot each shot in the story. And that would involve the lighting designer, the director, and the lighting designer, the director, and the director of photography, telling each actor how to set up their shot with the lights and with our iPhones. I'm 25, maybe 27 years in professional theater. I didn't know any of this stuff. Ultimately, I enjoyed it. Initially, like with anything else that you're foreign to, it was frustrating. It was not what I was used to. But because I was in 6 of the 10 episodes, after a while I got the hang of it.
Do you know what centimorgan is?
No.
It is a unit that measures genetic linkage. According to Ancestry.com, we share 3,400 of those, which makes you my father.
Ancestry.com? I'm not even in their database.
Dad, don't do this to me! It is a joke, Craig! I got you!
What? Who is this?
It's Kofi.
Kofi, the security guard at CFS.
Owner of the security card company at CFS? Yes, great. It's me, I hoodwinked you.
You didn't fool me, Kofi.
As far as what I'm looking forward to in the future, that is all so very uncertain right now. So much of our industry is about being in close proximity to one another. Without a vaccine, at least from my end, and I know a lot of other people feel the same way, without a vaccine, there is no future for us on stage. The risks are just so high.
So the 10-episode web series Homebound can be found right on YouTube. If you go to Roundhouse Theater's YouTube site and look up Homebound, all 10 episodes are there.
And I can't stop thinking about her. I keep hearing her voice in my head, you know? Am I crazy? Does that make me crazy?
No, I don't use that word, but this idea of paralysis, we should explore that. What keeps you from going outside, you know, reaching out? Oh my God.
Hang on, you have a baby?
Oh my God, there's poop everywhere.
Oh.
Oh my God, there's poop everywhere.
Oh.
I'm gonna call you back.
For me, making art in a pandemic isn't about pushing the limits for the sake of art. Art doesn't need us to exist. We need art to exist. So for me, the question is, how do I tell stories and what medium do I need to use in order to...
Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching, and until next time, always remember to follow your art.